So, Professor Elena, are you here? Professor Elena, are you here? অয়ন্তিকা, আমার কথা শোনা যাচ্ছে? Professor Elena, good afternoon. Good afternoon from India. Yeah.
Good afternoon.
Yeah, Richard, good afternoon. Thank you for joining. Professor Elena, your
Hi, good afternoon.
microphone is on, off, I think.
I know. Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yeah, আমার কথা শুনতে পাচ্ছেন নাকি?
Okay.
Richard, am
Yes,
I
sir.
audible?
Yes, sir. You are audible.
Yeah, I can hear you.
ওখানে বলতে শুনতে পাচ্ছি না। শান্তনু?
হ্যাঁ, now audible. একটু সমস্যা হচ্ছে।
আমি কিন্তু ভালো শুনতে পাচ্ছি।
আমরা তো পাচ্ছি। বলুন একবার। অয়ন্তিকা বলো। Hello. Good afternoon.
Yes, sir, you're audible.
Sir, am I audible to you, sir?
So you're audible, but I think PRC sir just left the meeting.
No, he is on meeting, but maybe some technical issues are there.
Professor Elena, good afternoon from India. Your
Good afternoon.
Yeah, good afternoon, and thanks for joining. So,
I'm here. I hope you
Yeah.
you can hear me and see me.
yes, and thank you for joining today's. I really admire your initiative. You are doing a very good job. So through your organization as well as your profile. So it's really wonderful. And thanks, we will be happy to hear from you. So Richard, thank you, Richard, for joining.
Yeah, my apologies. I didn't have it on my agenda.
No issue. It's really good. And I think Okuzu has also joined. Okuzu, are you here? So I think Amrita, we may start because it's almost 3 p.m. and we should start the session.
Okay, so then I will be starting the session.
Yes.
A very good afternoon to distinguished guests, respected professors, and esteemed participants present over here. I am Shomi Kayari, Research Associate at SAIARD, and it is my greatest pleasure to extend a warm welcome to all of you in today's national dialogue or international dialogue on nature-based solutions for sustainability. We are privileged to have with us today some of the esteemed guests and experts in this field whose dedication and expertise are driving the vision for bringing a more nature-based solutions for sustainable future in the world. The key panelists in today's dialogues are Mr. Richard Ellman, Professor E. Del Agnes, and Mr. Okuzu. And today's panel moderator will be Dr. B. Roy Chaudhary. Nature-based solutions are sustainable practices that integrate natural features and processes into the built environment. They can address societal challenges such as climate change, human health, food and water security, and disaster risk reduction. Nature-based solutions also play a key role in climate change adaptation and building resilience in landscape and communities. Today's discussion will focus on how nature-inspired approaches can address environmental challenges and promote sustainable practices. I hope these discussions and insights we share today will contribute significantly in shaping the policies and the governance that align our collective goal. Thank you once again for joining us, and I look forward to this insightful discussion. Now, may I request Dr. Vishwajit Rai Chaudhary sir to kindly deliver his welcome address. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Amrita. And first of all, on behalf of SAIARD, South Asian Institute for Advanced Research and Development, I heartily welcome today's honorable speakers, those who have joined from the different countries, from Italy, from Spain, as well as from Nigeria. So in three of these countries, we are well connected, and SAIARD, as a think tank organization, we are actually working, focusing on the climate change, dealing with the sustainability related issues, connecting with the national and international bodies, along with the government, non-government organizations. So since our journey, and as I am a faculty since in the University of Calcutta since 15 years, so most of the work we are doing in case of the nature-based solution or the climate change modeling or the climate finance related issues, that is the through that platform, it will definitely, I think today's session, which is based on the nature-based solution, as the whole world is focusing on the real-time solution on some nature-based solution for the sustainability, to establish the sustainability concept. And in this regard, SAIARD, since its beginning, is doing the focus on it. We are doing several research work, several evidence-based research studies, policy documents, white papers. Even the outreach is one of the part to implement our initiations and to support the concerned department, central and state governments as well. You will be happy to know that SAIARD has several verticals we have been designed, and on that basis, there are two major wings are there. That is the Himalayan Climate Consortium, as well as the Global River Alliance. And through that way, we are focusing and connecting river as one of the major prime subject or an entity, a dynamic entity, which is actually supporting the lifeline as well. Alongside the river, there are lots of cases are involved either from the biodiversity or ecology, etc. So in a word, that everything river is everything what I mean to say from ecology to economy. Same side, we are focusing on the case of the Himalayan sector as the mountain regions and its forest resource, its biodiversity is one of the part of that. So I think due to the extensive climate change related issues, most of the cases the natural resources are getting affected day by day, and that is why government, but if we consider the environmental degradation as well as the economic development, both are simultaneously moving hands in hands. So I think this is the time to have some solution, to talk about some solution, to do some activities in case of some policy oriented research. And in that perspective, I know that Richard is doing a very good job from International Water Association, as I am also associated with them. So from Nigeria, my friend Okuzu has joined, and Professor Elena, she is also working on that field in the climate change, and even she is also the associate president of the Italian Geographical Association. That is also my subject too. I hope through their discussion we will definitely get some insights, and that will help us to develop such kind of policy framework which will be helpful. And obviously, I would love to know what their organizations and individually they are doing in respective of their countries too, in case of such kind of the focal theme of that event. So with this, I once again convey my sincere gratitude and heartiest congratulations to all of you for being us. And hopefully in future, we will definitely work together. We will get the chance to work together and to do some positive activities in future. So with this, I have to leave. And as I have another meeting with one of the ministers right now, so it is an urgent basis. I got a SOS message from them. And so Soumi and all the officials of our organizations and other participants will also be there. And so thank you. And once again, Richard, Elena, Professor Elena and Okuzu, thanks to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Now we start with the main dialogue, the main session of today. First, I would request Mr. Richard Ellman, Head of Politics, Eurocrat Spain, to kindly start delivering his address. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much indeed. So I'm not an expert in nature-based solutions per se. Eurocrat deal with them, but as the head of politics, I come from the political and the social side of how to apply the technologies. So I don't have a lot of information with regards to the technical side and the technical application of nature-based solutions. However, as a doctor of political science, as the chairman of the former coordinator of the World Water Quality Alliance of UNEP, and as somebody who has worked a lot building bridges between scientists and technologists and the political sector, what I would say that from my personal opinion, with regards to nature-based solutions, one of the keys is that nature-based solutions are given the opportunity to have a proper effect. We spend a lot of time in the academic world, in the research world, in the public sector world, in private industry, and indeed citizens themselves, talking about nature-based solutions as if they were some wonderful automatic response to the world's environmental problems caused principally at the moment by climate change. But they are a mechanism which can only function if there is continuity. And in order to guarantee continuity, you need to be able to guarantee that there is the social and indeed the financial support to ensure that any form of nature-based solution is understood by the local community where you are applying it. And furthermore, that it's not going to be changed after a new mandate, a new political mandate takes place. And this happens very often within municipalities. So basically, most nature-based solutions are applied, obviously, at the local community, at the municipal level. And for example, in countries such as, for example, in Europe, that depends very much on the, shall we say, the political agenda of the parties that are in power at that time. Beyond Europe, the circumstances vary to a certain extent. But the most important thing, as I said before, is that there is public support right from the beginning. Therefore, when we look to apply nature-based solutions, and a lot of work has been done of this over the last 20 years, the first thing is that many people in the street, if you go out and say, what is a nature-based solution, they wouldn't have a clue what you're talking about. And that's pretty disgusting after 20 years, which is something that I will address a little later on. So first of all, we need to create awareness. Then what we need to do is we need to create engagement. Another problem is that the application of nature-based solutions is done very much by normally funded projects parachuting into a local community or into a municipality without really engaging in the citizens themselves, without them really understanding what is being done or why. And that makes the whole purpose of the exercise weakened from the very beginning. This idea of just parachuting into a community and claiming to the sponsors of the funded projects that they are doing citizen engagement because perhaps they will organize a couple of workshops where at best you'll have about a dozen people attending out of a population of 500,000 is not citizen engagement. So I would like to propose, and indeed the work that I've been doing over the last few years, both at UNEP in Nairobi and also in my permanent job as the head of politics of the Catalan Technology Center in Barcelona, is to ensure that, first of all, that there is a social and political understanding of environmental issues and solutions such as nature-based solutions. Now then, in order to guarantee that, I don't believe that researchers should create proposals and then try and find a place to apply that. I believe that what needs to be done, and indeed which is something that we're trying to demonstrate in a number of programs which I'm coordinating at the moment, is that we need to, first of all, speak to the local communities and say to them, what are the specific challenges that you are facing, both in Europe but beyond? And I'm working especially in the Mediterranean region, on the European and also on the North African side, but I'm also working as well in Africa itself. And we've discovered that it is far more effective, the application of solutions such as nature-based solutions, when you first of all talk to the local community and you say to them, what are the problems that you yourselves are actually suffering? And only people, residents of those local communities, will know that. And then afterwards, when you've identified the problems and you co-identify them together with the local population and with what in politics we call the quintuple helix, so that's the public sector, the private sector, the research sector, the cultural sector, for good, clear communication in the correct way for that community. And then also, of course, the most important element, the citizens, then you need to co-design solutions. And very often those solutions are nature-based solutions. When you've co-designed them, you then have to give the responsibility for the overseeing of the completion of that program and also the maintenance of that program to the local community, to the citizens. Billions have been spent on funded projects in Europe, in the United States, South America, Asia, and Africa, which have functioned only while the project is being funded. The moment that the project ceases to be funded, the entire infrastructure disappears. The local population are normally no more aware of what has happened than before. And the result is that we just simply waste time and money. And we cannot afford now to waste time nor money. I was asked the other day, why is it that we've only achieved 17% of the Sustainable Development Goals when we are actually due to have achieved all of them by 2030, which of course is not going to happen. And I'm just waiting personally until they start talking about 2050 and 2060, because very soon the politicians are going to have to change the date, because we know that by 2030, we're not going to achieve the aims of the SDGs, many of which will be helped by or would be helped by the application of nature-based solutions. But there is this enormous gap between what happens under funded projects, what happens under pilot schemes, and then what really happens in reality. And what we are trying to do at the moment is to translate scientific and technological knowledge regarding, for example, nature-based solutions into tangible and above all, permanent facts on the ground. So recently we've been applying these techniques in areas such as Kibra and Korogocho in the slums of Nairobi. We've been applying them in Somalia. We've been applying them in the Sudan. We've been applying them in the West Bank, and we've been applying them also in northern Mediterranean countries, which are facing the consequences of climate change. The application of nature-based solutions also permits us to widen our contact and our dialogue with the local community. If, as I've said before, that local community is really given the leadership and also the capacity to co-design, supported by technical experts, the solutions that they want to apply in their area. Now then, it's also given us the opportunity to open up channels of socio-political dialogue, because nature-based solutions are designed to make cities, urban areas, and also rural areas more sustainable. However, in order to do that as well, you've got to ask, well, why? And many people are ignoring the socio-political effects of climate change, which goes, first of all, from health to questions of migration, to questions of gender inequality, and also to the exasperation of the effects of armed conflict. And what we're trying to do is that we're trying to face head-on these questions, whilst also at the same time applying scientific and technological solutions, such as nature-based solutions. In order to do all of this, as I've said before, we need to politically and technically involve, from the very design of the action, the local community. They are the people who best understand what they need. It is not researchers from the outside. And what we do need as well is that those local communities are supported by scientists and technologists who are capable of transmitting and communicating their knowledge and their expertise in a way that the general public can understand. And this is something which I referred to earlier and which I come back to again now, that the research community in general is absolutely appalling at communicating its knowledge. Many researchers, many people who are creating excellent nature-based solutions restrict themselves to reporting such events in peer-reviewed journals. Nobody reads a peer-reviewed journal except for other scientists interested in that subject. And scientists who are paid for by society, normally, I know that it's different in the US, but certainly in Europe and Africa, much of the research that is done using public funds. They do not seem to understand that they have a responsibility, both moral and practical, to listen and to engage with the people who they purport that they will help, but with whom they actually have very little dialogue whatsoever. So what we are doing is that we're trying to create this direct communication through a scheme which we call science embassies, where the scientist becomes not the leader of an action, but rather the supporter and the practical, technical knowledge that is required by a local community in order to establish what very often are nature-based solutions, but not exclusively so. I think that sets out my early thoughts on the subject. The program that we are developing is a program called Cassandra 2025. It's supported by the United Nations, by the European Commission, by the World Bank, and we're working, as I said, first of all on pilot sites in the Mediterranean and in Africa. The technical solutions that we apply to what are principally social and political effects of climate change tend to be, at least 90% of them tend to be nature-based solutions. So the relevance of nature-based solutions cannot be understated. But as I said to you before, I'm talking from a social political perspective. I'm a political scientist. I'm also the former mayor of a city in Spain. So I do understand how important it is to bring the whole community on, because otherwise we can have millions of conferences such as this one discussing the wonderful benefits of nature-based solutions. But if they're not applied and if they're not supported by the general public, if for example, in Europe, they're not supported by the voters, in other countries beyond Europe, sometimes if they're not supported by the autocracy which exists in that country, then there is absolutely no way that nature-based solutions are going to serve their purpose because they simply won't be applied correctly. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. It was indeed an insightful conversation in which we got to know about the importance of the involvement of local community, and also that from local community we can get to understand the best what is the need of the hour. So thank you so much. Now, moving on to the next, I would like to request Professor E. Del Agnes, President of the Italian Association of Geographers and professor at the University of Milano, Italy. Over to you, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would like to present a PowerPoint, but you will need to give me the possibility to do it. Because I'm not allowed to do it now.
Ma'am, if you want to present your screen, share your screen and do the presentation, then you can do it.
The button is not active.
Okay, ma'am, just give me a minute, please.
Yes, thank you. However, I'm very happy to be speaking after Dr. Elman because my name is Elena Dell'Agnese and I am a geographer, but also I'm working on environmental humanities. Or we call environmental humanities, or this attempt to put together research on the environment and humanities. And actually, I've been involved in the last year in a kind of new theoretical approach that can be defined as eco-critical geopolitics. And I would like to speak about today. I'd like to show you something. However, the issue about the nature-based solution, as Dr. Elman said already, is what is nature actually? And who is involved in nature? Nature-based solution means that we are just outside waiting for something else happening, or we are just working on nature, or we are part of nature. I remember one of the very first, most intriguing definition offered by Williams, who said the quote is exactly, here we are. This is a different. This is not my presentation. I should have a chance of presenting from my computer.
Very sorry, ma'am. There is some errors, but just give us a few minutes. We will be sharing your presentation.
Okay. However, I was just quoting Raymond Williams, who says,
Hello, Professor Elena, ma'am. Are you here? Ma'am, can you listen us? Hello, ma'am. Ma'am, please, can you unmute? We cannot hear you. Excuse me, ma'am. You need to unmute yourself. We cannot hear you. Can you please?
Sorry. And
It's
it says that I cannot share it. I don't know why. Not
okay,
now.
ma'am. Then you can do one thing. I'm sharing my email address, so you can send us the presentation. Then we can share it on your behalf.
Okay. So maybe someone else can speak while I do this operation. I don't want to make you lose too much time.
Sure, ma'am. Sure, sure.
And
Okay, sorry, ma'am. First of all, we had this technical error. Then,
yes,
Mr. Okuzu, are you here?
by the way, I cannot send it to you because I don't have your address, email address. I need your email address. Send me a message.
Ma'am, I just sent my email address in the chat box. Ma'am, can you see it?
No.
Ma'am, I have just sent the email address in the chat box, ma'am. Can you please
I
see it, ma'am?
okay, sorry, I was looking for in the mail.
Amrita, Amrita, you
Yes, sir.
please, you please share your email address in my WhatsApp. I will forward it to my WhatsApp. And Okuzu, are you here?
Yes, of course. I'm here. I'm here.
So Amrita, you please share your email address to my WhatsApp. I will forward her, Professor Eli.
Okay, sir, I'm sending it to you.
Okay. And I think next part, Okuzu may say and then.
Okay, sir. So moving on with our session, I would like to invite Mr. Okuzu, Chairperson of International Water Association, YWP Nigeria. Over to you, sir.
All right. Thank you so much for the introduction. Um, I would love to thank Dr. Richard for giving lots of insights from his own view. Just like you say, the nature-based solution to sustainability is very, very wide. Lots of school of thought are attached to it, lots of industries, are attached to it. So we have different professions that are attached to it. So it has its own political space, both agriculture, so many spaces it's there involved. So, but looking at the nature-based solution from the water sector, you know, um, it's quite challenging, because I think currently the global water demand is really increasing for almost everyone, for all users. And currently we have let's say I think 4 quadrillion liters, requirement daily, and we lack facilities globally, for this very production. And not just that, the the big challenge is that most of this solution to sustainable water supplies, have their dependent on energy. And some of them, a good number of them, source their energy from internal combustion engine, which supports the green gas emission, and which is really affecting the climate, and leading to so many natural disasters. Yeah. So looking at it from the water view, just like I said earlier, it's quite challenging. I agree with Dr. Richard when he mentioned about going down to the grassroots, educating the grassroots, because a good number of people don't even know what NBS is. The NBS term is not, much in use. And that's really to tell you to the extent we're embracing such solution. So it's very, very important, we we encourage communications, public awareness campaigns, to educate the public on the benefits of NBS for water sustainability. Uh, and this could involve workshops, social media engagement with schools and universities. So for our own country, Nigeria and Africa in general, I think most of the African countries are really, taking part in the MBS because let's take for instance, very, very poor houses, in Africa have this air conditioning and infrastructure. So, but when you look at that compared to the European continent and North and South America, you see the huge difference. So, I think Africa still have this, nature-based solution values because come to think of it, too, most of these very some communities are believing without the non-MBA solution which we are having today. A good number of communities, going back in time to how they live and how they cope. And just because we're trying to embrace efficiency in living, and we're just getting involved in non um, NBS solution. And at the end, we are having the climate change in return as a product of what we're doing, and it's really really bad. Some people do call this traditional values a cake, but it's not a cake. There are reasons why they're there. For example, the tree planting. The thing is that we've lost this very sight of looking at this very climate change from a very good perspective. A good number of us say climate change, and then we keep on, the transition to clean power, the transition to solar energy. Actually, question what's the sustainability of this solar transition? We have limited lead to sustain this very energy. So what's the plan? Don't we have any other exit? So we can still on the other side, let's say for example in your house you have let's say 3 4 air conditions, but we can minimize the use of energy, and that will really help us, to bring this down. Or possibly not every single time you need an air conditioner. Sometimes you just need to, that's why the windows are there. I mean, the windows is also one of the nature-based solution because they are there for ventilation. But these days we hardly open the windows. We only, use them as a lightning point. So just like I said earlier, we're not getting a good view of this uh, climate change. From my own side, I would say climate change is something that has been because we've not been, today's not the these days are not the days we, all of these emissions are traced back to early during the industrialization. So, but even now we're working on the efficiency compared to former times. So, but look at it as a hanging fruit because tree planting is a way of I call it a machine. That's what I call trees. I call them machines, food machines basically. And why I call them food machines is that because it's very, very clear, because it's a processing machine. You plant a tree and this tree goes, trapping carbon emission. And the funny thing is that it doesn't just stop there, trapping this very carbon emissions and then converting it to food. And not just food, we also have the oxygen, which is the basic thing we hardly talk about. You know, our oxygen consumption is also one of the basic things we get from trees. Then we also talk about water. We also talk about the windbreakers. We also talk about the soil erosion. But we are not paying attention to this. a good number of research kind of not so much encouraged when it comes to tree planting. They always see it as the old way, but the old way pays. That's just the truth. The old way pays. So yeah, I think for the water industry, for the water sector, um, tree planting is very, very vital. I think it's one of the best nature-based solution from my own perspective, because other other form of non-MBS solution have their own limitation, a very, very big limitation. So I'm just thinking about that, in in by 2050, the world would be consuming over 5,500 to 6,000 kilometer cube, and this is a very, very big challenge if you know what it is. So that means that we have to take a very good look at the desalination plants, and then we have to work on the efficiency. I think the an alternative to the NBS. I wouldn't say that I'm discouraging other non-NBS, technologies going on, but I think it's good to work on the sustainability and also the efficiency. Yeah, because that's why we do the environmental impact assessment. So if we can, continue with the environmental impact assessment to see what does this, put out there, what does this, how do we maintain this, or how do we continue with this, then we think we're going to have it well. So yeah, we have rivers, and then we also have to also work on the restoration of our wetlands, because you know over, I think, one third of the globe, is occupied by water. So this water, why it's not, I think one in 100 is only available for drinking. So why the rest are not, you know, uh, safe for drinking is that there's seawater. Some of them are frozen. So, but the seawaters we have is salt water. So we need to desalinate, and then but the wetland, one of the natural plants we have for desalination. So, and then we have to, invest. We have to look at the restorations of our own wetlands. It's very, very important because that's the only, NBS we have when it comes to water purifications and looking at the water demand, ahead of us. So it's painful that currently non-MBAs are, causing us more harm than good. For example, in the genetic modified food, currently distributed across Europe and US. I think I'm so much happy with Putin. That Russia on the ban on the genetic modified food, So, and these are ways, we can encourage nature-based solutions. These are ways to encourage, and then the policies, just like my friend Dr. Richard mentioned, from the political side, going back to the grassroots has to understand, because once the grassroots makes an opinion of it, then it's final. They have to be the one to embrace. And then when they come in uniform, and then they make a statement to the government, and then it's becomes something very, very, very serious. So I agree with him on that, connecting, and then aligning with the local. So it's very, very important we do that. So yeah, and I think the last thing before we leave. So the echo, the I think we also have the community-led initiative that utilize traditional knowledge for sustainability. I think some few days ago I made a post on LinkedIn about my own community. They had this very celebration for New Yam Festival, So, and the New Yam Festival is something, that comes with a celebration where people come around in the village square and they celebrate the new yam, and not just that they celebrate the new yam, they award titles, to good yam, yam farmers, and also provide a networking environment with other yam farmers. And not just that, they also have this very discussion, to talk about the production, and then, how to do away with the climate change and everything. And I think this is something that we barely pay attention to. We are looking up to conferences. Yeah, conferences very, very important. But then we also have to look at, because this is what a conference looks like when it comes to a village settings, the grassroots. We have to pay attention to some of these events in the villages, local grassroots that supports NBS. We have to promote them, because by doing so, we're giving more light and then more awareness to the MBS. Yeah, so I think I would love to stop here. So thank you so much for listening. Yeah.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts on encouraging nature-based solutions and making it more community-based. And it was also great to hear that communities in Africa, how they still hold the nature-based social values. Thank you, sir. Professor Elena, are you here, ma'am? Ma'am, I have received your presentation. I can share it so you can make the address.
Thank you.
Okay, ma'am, so I'll be sharing your presentation.
Okay.
And ma'am, you can just inform me when to go to the next slide so I can change it for you.
Okay. I can't say like the presentation at the moment. Are you sharing it already?
Ma'am, just a second, I'm sharing it.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Well, we can just go to the next, because it's obviously this just my name. Okay, the outline of my presentation. I was quoting Raymond Williams saying that nature is one of the most difficult thing to define. And so when we speak about nature-based, what are we talking about? And then how do we assess the value of this thing that we don't know how to define when we talk about sustainability? And then I'm just trying to promote actually a way of tackling these kind of issues, trying to understand not the absolute value of nature, because it doesn't exist, but the value that nature can have for us, or how this value is produced in our mind. How many discourses we share about nature, and how these kind of discourses are produced by popular culture. And then I will speak about climate fiction, taking climate fiction as a case study. Next. Can you change? Okay. So this is a quote by Raymond Williams, as I was mentioning before. And we say that when we say nature, do we mean to include ourselves? Indeed, are we a part of nature, or just there is nature and then there are humans? Because the attitude and the practice towards nature and nature-based solution and sustainability, actually, they can change dramatically depending on what we think we are, if we are inside nature or outside nature. Next. Change, please. Okay. Again, I'm quoting someone very popular, that is David Harvey, the famous geographer. And David Harvey says something about the most famous classic definition of sustainability. Because if we are to respect the need of the future generation, we must know, or we should be able to evaluate these needs. But how can we evaluate this need? We don't know which kind of needs they will have, because our father and our relatives didn't know which kind of need we would have. So is it possible to evaluate, to give nature a value? This is the question that David Harvey just stressed. So which is the value of nature? And how can we try to measure it? How can we postulate that this value that is now given, but we don't know how to measure it, is possibly constant for the next generation? And is it possible to quantify this stock? So this question can be very relevant, and that's why I'm going to speak about something that's maybe may look something distant from the topic of the seminar we are just participating today, but that, in my opinion, is quite relevant and important. Every time we speak about nature and sustainability and also nature-based solution, that is the discourse that we share about the environment, or that we don't share about the environment. Which kind of connection do we think we have with the environment? Please change the slide. Okay. Because there is a lot of literature about this changing value or about the idea of nature in the past and also in the present. But I think that we need really to try to understand which is our attitude toward nature, if we think we are part of nature or not, and if so, which kind of attitude which kind of practice we are just we need to have towards nature. Can you change the slide, please? Okay. So I define the taken for granted assumption that we have towards nature as a discourse, and especially as an environmental discourse, and the discourse about the environment. So a discourse is a historically specific worldview that is used as the basis for formulation of the social action, but also not necessarily social, of an action towards something. And the theoretical approach that I've been developing in the years in order to understand or to evaluate or to analyze, to construct the environmental discourse produced by popular culture may be defined as eco-critical geopolitics. Now I'm going to try to explain why I believe that is important to reason also in terms of eco-critical geopolitics. Can you change the slide, please? Okay. Eco-critical, I don't know if you are aware of quite a very popular research approach among political geographers that is called critical geopolitics. Is most relevant author is Gerald Toal, who said that the representation of the self and the other in our geopolitical imagination, our geopolitical map of the world, is produced or might be produced by three different kinds of sources. And these sources are defined as what we're studying at school, formal geopolitics, what we are listening in the official speeches by politicians, political institutions, practical geopolitics, and what we learn from the media, from popular culture, from cinema, novels, cartoons, and things like that. And I believe that this same kind of schema can be used also to study not only the geopolitical discourse, as Gerald Toal was suggesting with critical geopolitics, but also the discourse that we have about the environment. Can you change the slide, please? Okay. So in this perspective, I developed this idea of eco-critical geopolitics. Eco-critical geopolitics is a form of critical geopolitics, but focused mainly on trying to understand the taken for granted categories that we are about the environment, or about the relation between human beings and the environment, about the relation of power that most often we think we have with the environment. We don't think we are part of the environment of nature, but we think that there is humans, then there is the environment, and that we have a power, the power to act as we like, sometimes thinking of conserving the environment. Can we go to the next, please? Okay, so from the same schema before I developed this different schema that is just what we think about the environment, the discourse and practice that we have toward the environment are just developed exactly as Gerald Toll said about the geopolitical discourse from the same sources, that is schools, that is a politician, and that is media and popular culture. So next. Okay, we know that we can define at least 6 different discourses about the environment. But just to be synthetic, we could say that there is a mainstream environmentalism, conservationists, for instance, define that conservation, we need to conserve the environment because we need it, because the environment is a resource or full of resources for us. Or maybe we need to preserve the environment because we have a psychological relationship with it. So this is defined as mainstream environmentalism. Then there is a radical environmentalist that is saying we are part of nature, we are part of the environment, we have to act responsibly towards the environment because it has an intrinsic value, not because it's useful for us, but because every form of life has got an intrinsic value. Then a part of this radical environmentalism, there is ecofeminism, saying that there is a connection between, sorry, the idea that of the power asymmetries between men and women and between humans and nature. And so I think that an important connection between humans and nature and their practices and their solution, their sustainability and everything must be included in this attempt of understanding which kind of discourse we have. That is, if we think that the environment should be protected because it's useful for us as human, or because we are just one of the many species living on the planet, and that the environment is important for itself. If we look in the second perspective, I believe that nature-based solutions are solutions that are involving humans together with nature, not apart from nature. Can we go to the next slide, please? Okay, now go to this is complicated, it's just next. Can we go to the next? Okay, going to the example that I wanted to develop with you, just that we can take into account climate fiction. Climate fiction is a definition that is offered to all these texts in popular cultures speaking about climate changes, and specifically thinking, representing a world that is being changed by the climate because of the configuration of the land masses is changed and the large region of the planet are not livable anymore. So as you probably know, that there has been a big development of this production of texts, starting from the end of the 90s or just the first 2 decades of the new millennium. There are a big amount of novels and also movings about the idea that there will be a climate change. And so that's why we have been using this definition, climate fiction. Usually, climate fiction is considered a sort of a cautionary tale that is something with a message. Take care, because if you don't behave in a certain way, the world is going to be desolated and changed. So take care, be cautious towards the environment. So we can say that is a narrative with an environmental message. But, and that's my point, which kind of message are we conveying with climate fiction? And so which kind of behavior we will be induced to have, which kind of practices we will have following this message? because there is a message, and there is, as I said before, the discourse is the taken for granted idea that we have about the environment. Usually, and many texts of climate fiction are very much conservative, characterized by a strong anthropocentric perspective, and so they're permeated by what I would define a conservationist discourse, because they tend to represent the world, as I will demonstrate with the next slide, the world of the humans that's been ruined or just changed, altered. No, go back. Oh, the same is being changed and altered. Not who cares about what is happening to the other living beings. And this is a point that is, in my opinion, is very important, because if we are part of the nature, we don't think only of the nature as a solution for the nature, for the environment, but we are acting inside nature to protect everything, not because it's useful for us, but because we are part of nature. Again, now we can go to the next slide. Okay. Thinking about what is represented in the most popular texts in climate fiction, we can say that, for instance, usually there are no non-human animals, but at the most there is a dog. If there are animals, they are usually represented in a very dangerous way. They are just malignant, and they are regaining the upper hand over human species. So there are animals that we don't like where should be human. In the picture in this slide are from the day after tomorrow, where we had wolves that escaped the zoo in the city of New York, and now they're a menace. And the other one is Mad Max Fury Road, a movie from the 2015, very, very popular. But they were just in a desert because there are no more trees, and they don't even remember what a tree is. And they are looking for a green place. And this green place should be a place that is different from the rest of the world, still has trees, but they go there and they find only crows. But crows are again malignant. They are not they are not used in a positive representation of resilience of the planet. They are malignant. So climate fiction tend to represent the world in a very conservationist way. That is, the world for the humans has changed, but and the animals, they are dangerous. They are not part of the planet, of the life of nature as we are. They are just dangerous. And then the next slide. Okay, this is again another example, a very famous novel from the 60s. The author is J.G. Ballard, an English novelist that represented the world as covered with water, because climate fiction doesn't know, I mean, can offer the representation of the world as a desert or as a land of ice, or just as a covered with water, as in this famous novel. But again, in this case, there is a representation of the world that is not no more apt for humans, but is very, very apt for other living beings, such as iguanas, for instance, or other tropical species. So there is a tropicalization of the Western world. The city where the novel is set is London, but you don't recognize it until the middle of the novel, because it's so covered with tropical plants and species that it doesn't look like. No, go back, please. Can you go back to the, okay. So there is this submerged city that is London, and in London humans cannot live anymore. But there are a lot of animals, as I said, iguanas, basilisk, and etc., etc. You can see it from the two cover of this of the novel. Again, the idea is not that, well, the humans are changing their habits, they are changing, they are living in different areas, are living in the pole, but there are a lot of animals that are thriving. Actually, the planet is changing, but it is changing in a different way. No, the nature is represented something outside. No, the humans are not part of the nature is outside, and the nature is malignant again. So, this is a classic example. Climate fiction can be considered usually charged with a message about the environment, but this message is not a message that can suggest us that we are part of the nature, and as part of the nature we must live inside the nature and respect the nature. No, the nature is something that's outside, that is, we should conserve the nature because the environment, because it's useful for us, and we should be afraid that it goes changing, because if it changes against us, and not and this is it. And so it doesn't have any value for itself. And next and last, please. So we can say altogether that climate fiction has got a very representing the landscape, the anthropogeographic landscape as a fractured and destroyed, and this is its main focus. So it's just anthropocentric and conveying a conservationist message. So maybe if we need to think of sustainability in as nature-based, but nature, remembering that we are nature, and we try to represent it also to produce a different message when we speak about the environment, even with popular culture. And I finish. I don't know if I was clear enough. I'm sorry for the complication of my presentation. It was a bit confused because of the difficulties, but I finished. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much for your presentation. And once again, I would like to apologize from our behalf for the technical errors that has been caused. And thank you so much for your cooperation for that. And thank you so much for sharing your thoughts and what you think is the value of nature, and how you made a beautiful connections with climate science fiction and climate change. So with that, we come to the end of our discussion session, and it is now open for an interactive session. So all the participants present over here, you can make your questions or also share your thoughts on what you think for nature-based solutions for sustainability. Any questions from the participants?
Hello.
Yes, we can hear you. You can make your question.
Oh, thanks all the speakers. They're very insightful and practical situations and on different aspects and all these things. Now I'm asking, what is the way forward and what we can expect from the government or policy makers, or what strict regulations are required at this time of our life. Everybody is telling act now, but what is the actual things with the reality or way forward to for the community and uh, large and the stakeholders at large? What do you need at this moment from the COP29 or from the policy makers or uh, government things? It may be localized, but it will be definitely localized. It vary from country to country and everything. But in general, uh, that is my question. Hello. You understand my point?
Hello, Mr. Suman. Actually, we couldn't hear you properly. Can you please repeat your question once again?
Or perhaps he can type his question in the chat.
Okay, sir. So, Mr. Suman, you can please write down your question in the chat box. We couldn't hear you properly. So please write down your question in the chat box. Till then, we have Mr. Ankit Sengupta raising his hand. So, Ankit, you can go forward with your question, please.
So good afternoon, everyone. It was really insightful to hear everybody talking about nature-based solution and how everybody implements it in their own practical fields and different professions, how everybody does that. So my question was specifically to Mr. Richard, as he said that he bridges the gap between the political sector and nature-based solutions in the real world. So um, it was really insightful to hear about how he talked about involving the locals in the process, be it awareness, engagement, application, designing, as in co-designing, and the maintenance. So, sir, could you please elaborate on the fact on how uh, you kind of get the feedback from the users who are using that area or that space or that resource? How do you make sure um, the implementation that has been done, it was to the point? How do you get the feedback for that?
Well, first of all, we have to get rid of a certain number of pre-established concepts. Excuse me. So the first thing is that we don't go into an area, whether it be in Africa or in the Mediterranean, and hopefully after November 2025 in South America or
Sorry
Asia.
to interrupt, Dr. Richard. Are you speaking? Because we cannot hear you.
Yeah, I am speaking. Yeah, my microphone is on. Yeah, Elena can
Yes,
hear
sir,
me.
you are audible.
Yeah.
Dr. Richard is audible. Is there any
Yeah.
problem with others? Dr. Richard is audible.
I can hear.
He's audible, yes.
Okay,
Yes,
for
yes.
those of
Sir,
you
please
who can hear
continue.
me.
Continue, sir. Sorry, sir.
Okay, so what was I saying? Oh, yes. All right. So I found Elena's explanation very interesting because that's something that as a political scientist I've been looking at for many years, and I was very much in agreement with what Elena was saying. But my job is to try and convert supranational strategy, for example, the SDGs, but not exclusively the SDGs, and convert them into tangible effects on the ground. Now, then, the only way that we can do that is by identifying people from local communities. So I'll use the example, for example, of Kibera. I was working at the United Nations Environment Program for a year in Gigiri, in Nairobi, and Kibera, or Kibra, as they call it, is 15 minutes down the road. So together with somebody who worked with me, who's actually from Kibra, we went into that district and we started talking to local activists. There are always activists in any local community. Perhaps they're not working on the environment. In fact, the person who I met was a young man called Brandon Okoth, who now is 23, 24, I think. And he was running a school for children whose parents simply could not afford to send them to school under any conditions. So he was running a voluntary school. And we began to talk, and we were talking about the conditions of the River Nairobi. And the River Nairobi is basically a polluted stream that runs through Kibera and indeed Korogocho and other districts of Nairobi. And it is the source of their drinking water. It is the source of their washing. And it's unfortunately a source of disease and also for a number of reasons which I won't go into now, a source of gender discrimination. And it is also a true reflection of the effects of climate change on what is already a very devastated community. I mean, Kibera is the largest slum in Africa. It has a population of approximately 1 million people living in appalling conditions. And when, for example, they are suffering from extreme weather events such as flooding or drought, then these people basically, they lose their lives. Now then, there's no point that a 63-year-old European such as myself goes in there and says to them, you have a problem. They know they have a problem. I don't need to tell them that. There's no point as me as well going in there as a 63-year-old European and saying, I've got the solution, because nobody's going to trust me. Billions of foreign dollars have been invested in Kibera. And if you ever have the chance to go to Nairobi and see it, you won't see 1 cent of that having been spent on the Kibera slum. But that's a political question, which again, I won't go into now. But what I did realize after years of experience in citizen engagement, not just as a political scientist, but also as the deputy mayor and mayor of a Spanish city, was the fact that the people already exist. The means to actually start applying solutions, such as nature-based solutions, already exist, because you have local activists who are from that area, and who have therefore something which we badly really need in society in general, which is a thing called trust. These people are trusted. And so therefore, they give us the chance to be able to say to them, look, we're interested in this aspect of your community. We know that you aren't necessarily addressing those issues, but would you be prepared within your work to also look at this? And as a result, we have started a scheme together with the Watoto Library and together with, for example, the Coombe Green Solutions in Korogocho, to start cleaning up the River Nairobi, but looking at sustainable nature-based solutions in order to guarantee, for example, further resilience to flooding, and also at the same time to give the neighborhood a purpose. Now then, if the neighborhood is to have a purpose, it needs to feel that it is the owner and the leader of the initiative. That is the only way that we get people involved. And it's the only way, therefore, that we can guarantee something else, which is really lacking in politics and indeed in the application of technological solutions to many questions, not just environmental, which is continuity. And so what we're looking for is trust and continuity. And the only way of doing that is basically working through these already established people. And so that is what we're doing. And we've put it to the test in Kenya, in various parts of Kenya, ranging from Nairobi up to Lake Turkana. We've been putting it to the test deliberately in very difficult areas at the moment. And we've been doing this very deliberately. So for example, Somalia, for example, the Sudan at the moment, with the conditions that exist there, not only with the crisis in Darfur, but with the civil war that's been occurring in Omdurman and Khartoum. We've been working now in the West Bank during this situation, the terrible situation which is occurring in Palestine at the moment. And what we have done is that we have tried to look at the source of the problems and applying very often nature-based solutions that we are discovering that those solutions are maintained by the people. They become a source of pride. They also therefore start improving the health situation, which can be very, very, very dramatic depending on where we're working. But also therefore, as a result of that, we are working directly and indirectly on the question of migration, on the question of gender equality, for example. I mean, one of the cases which is extremely well documented and that we are looking at is the problem that, for example, many foreign-sponsored actions regarding, for example, the creation of clean drinking water have been actually taken over after those projects by local mafias who are then demanding sex from women for access to clean water. And there are a number of reports which are demonstrating that. So we're trying to look at the political and the social consequences of environmental crisis. But at the same time, we understand, or we believe, that it is only the local society themselves that can give the solutions. My job then is to put in direct dialogue the people who are working on the ground with the supranational agencies, who in turn have a responsibility, which they are failing at the moment, to pressure national governments. So, for example, we put them in direct contact with the United Nations Environment Programme, because obviously that was what I was working for at the time. We are putting them in contact with UNESCO, with the World Bank, with the European Commission, and we are asking that the funding organizations, what they do is that they try to take a far more practical, pragmatic approach. The scientists, the technologists who I represent, because I'm the head of politics of the Catalan Technology Center, our job is to ensure, as I said before, that our knowledge, and when I say our, I mean the scientist knowledge, not mine, the scientist knowledge actually reaches the people who need it when and if they ask for it. Okay, so that's what we describe as the science embassy concept. And that's why before I was talking about this idea of clear communication of academic and scientific and technological concepts. We need to be able to communicate that very clearly. And so that's something else that we're also working on at the time. But how do we achieve this? It is always through the engagement of what we call the quintuple helix at the local community level. And indeed, if it's not just myself who's saying this, I mean, for example, if you read most supranational policy papers, they always describe the importance of the local community. The people who very often ignore the importance of the local community and who feel that they have to tick a certain box without making much effort are normally the funded researchers themselves. And be careful, I represent that sector, and it's not, this is something which I tell researchers to their faces every day. And many of them do agree. Some of them don't, but many of them do agree. But we do have to make sure that there is this connection and that there is this constant dialogue. In the same way that, for example, when we talk about nature-based solutions, and we talk about the WEFE Nexus plus H, so the connections, the intimate connections between water, energy, food production, ecosystems, and health. You can't take, unfortunately in this world, you can't take an issue in isolation and resolve it. You have to look at the far broader picture and the interactions. So for example, and as I said before, right at the beginning, I'm not an technical expert on nature-based solutions, but we also have to, when we're applying nature-based solutions, look at the consequences for all of the different environmental aspects. And the people who know best about that must be who are the researchers, who are the scientists, need to be in constant conversation with the people on the ground, who are, at the end of the day, the only people who can guarantee that we apply that. So that Elena was raising her hand there. Elena, who's now going to probably kill me for what I have just said, but
I totally agree. I was just,
I
I would like to underline that popular culture, even if it is apparently innocent or useless, just an entertainment, indeed it's a powerful instrument for creating awareness. So popular culture is actually a way to create activists, or so that's why I think that trying to understand which kind of message and which kind of discourse about the environment is conveyed by popular culture is important, because if it's used, if we go to school, we speak with people, we are just directly involved, or maybe not. We just live in a privileged area, but if we try to understand what is happening, is very important. And popular culture is a way for making us understand what is happening, but it depends on which kind of attitude. It's just try to communicate to our role and our connection with nature. That's why I'm saying that I think it's important, even if it's apparently just a fancy thing. Thank you.
I actually totally agree. In fact, one of the things that I'm trying to promote is this use of popular culture to get the messages across. And in fact, what we're trying to do is to create this nexus between science, between culture, and also between what we call science diplomacy, which I'm very much involved in on behalf of the European Commission. You do need to get the message across in the right way to the right people. And this is what unfortunately hasn't happened in the past. And this is why so little progress is very much made on the ground. I mean, the technology is there. I mean, when I come back from Africa or from the Middle East or from Asia, and I'm talking to the scientists who I represent in Catalonia, and they say, well, we've got the technical answer to that problem, and that problem. And I said, my frustration, but at the same time, my purpose is to say, well, okay, so let's get your knowledge to those people in a way that they can understand and that they can apply as quickly as possible. And this is something that has to be something that has to be developed. And I very much agree with Elena that popular culture, I mean, the question of image, for example, an image is far more powerful than any number of peer-reviewed articles. It's a terrible example to give, but I was in the Bled Strategic Forum in Slovenia this week, and I met this Syrian refugee who had famously tried to cross the Mediterranean. Unfortunately, her husband and 500 other people drowned on the same boat, and she was one of only 2 people to be rescued. And I was talking to her about what was the best way that we could help, and it was a question of the creation of awareness and what have you. And I thought back to when I was first beginning the Cassandra program to connect the question of climate change to its social political effects. And one of the things that had inspired me to do that was the Syrian crisis at that time, because the Syrian crisis demonstrated to those of us in Europe that there was a terrible social political problem, which was the following: that people who were trying to escape from devastating situations in their own country, who were risking their life crossing the sea, were received by closed borders and downright prejudice in Europe. And that's not just one country. Unfortunately, that is absolutely every single member state of the European Union has got a large number of races. You only have to look at what happened in the UK a month ago. You only have to look at what happens in Italy, what happens in Greece, what happens in Spain, which is where I reside now, to understand the intense racism that can cause, because the nationalists, the populists, play on this migration, saying you are going to be under threat. It's Trump politics, but translated to Europe. And this, unfortunately, is occurring. And so my question about 7 years ago, which I asked myself was, well, if this is the result of what is a fairly small number of people trying to escape from a specific situation in Syria, what is going to happen when climate change results in a form of mass migration that has been seen before in human history, many thousands of years ago, but we are all migrants. We are all the result of great migrations right across the globe. This climate change situation, there are many scientists who are saying that by the end of the century, there is going to be a form of mass migration. So what social and political challenges do we face? And that was how the Cassandra program actually began.
Yeah, I think what Dr. Richard just said about the whole situation about relatability and how the local communities can only understand and can move forward through activists and local communities who are their representative to the organizations and also the local communities actually really makes sense. Also, what uh, Dr. Agnes just mentioned about popular culture actually adds to the concept of relatability about popular culture. I think that really makes sense because at this age and era, relatability is the main thing that needs to be focused to actually reach the masses and for them to understand what can be done through their help for them, for the community. So thank you so much, Dr. Richard and Dr. Agnes. It was really insightful. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your question. I just want to add one thing. We live in an age of social media, and I've been happily criticizing at the beginning scientists who restrict themselves to peer-reviewed articles, and I do believe that. But having said that, we also live in a society which is facing another crisis, which is education. We are developing generations whose self-awareness, whose empathy, and indeed whose knowledge is very much based on very short, very erroneous, and very evidence-lacking opinions which are expressed on social media. And social media is far more effective, very often, than serious scientific or political debate. People are not prepared to read long articles anymore. And this is something which is lacking. And this is something which also has to be questioned and it has to be faced at an educational level. So the question of education is absolutely essential if we are to successfully confront these issues in the future, because it is so easy through social media for anybody to express an opinion. And unfortunately, we live in a society where most people, if they see something written or if they see something taped on whatever form of social media they follow, they believe it. We are really developing a number of generations who really don't have the intellectual capacity to analyze or think for themselves. And that is just as dangerous as the lack of any other action that we're doing. So when, for example, if you want to go to a local community and you want to apply nature-based solutions, you do have to educate the people who are perhaps financing that, the societies who are financing that, so that they understand the importance. And unfortunately, we live in a world of populism. I'm 63 years old. I started studying politics at university in 1978, 79, a long time ago. And I have never known a moment when the political level, not just of the politicians, who are a result of society, they're a product of society, has been so low. Now then, those politicians, and we can talk about the typical famous ones such as Trump, but believe me, Trump unfortunately is not an exception. Right across the world, and I travel all around the world all the time, the political level is extremely low and is extremely populist. And that is because society allows it, and society allows it because basically we're educating people in the wrong way. It's a whole new debate, and I don't want to go into that now, but I think it's something that we need to be aware of.
May I ask my question?
Yes, Mr. Madhukar, you can go on with your question, please.
Thank you. My question is to Dr. Richard. You said we need to take the right message to the right people. So who exactly is this set of right people? I mean, are these the politicians, the policymaker, the administrator, the local communities? Who exactly is the right people, so to say, to whom we have to take this message that nature-based solutions are the key to success to solving this climate catastrophe and taking the world towards climate resilience? Who are the right people?
All of them.
All of them.
All of them. It's a serious answer. Everybody needs to be made aware. Everyone needs to receive a message, but everyone needs to receive distinct messages which they can relate to. So when I'm talking to researchers, I am pleading with them to not parachute into a local community, but identify before they even create project proposals, those communities with whom they can work, because that would be far more effective. When I'm talking to cultural people, I'm asking them to create clear messages for very, very different audiences. So it's not just one message, it's different messages for different target audiences. When I'm talking to the local communities, I'm asking for them to trust us, which is the most difficult of all. Okay. And what I need to do is to show that, look, if and when that local community need our help, for example, as research centers, or for example, as supranational entities, we are there and we will try whatever we can to give them that help. When I'm talking, for example, to the politicians, be it at different tiers, so be it at the local or regional level, at the national level, or at the supranational level, I am asking them to understand and to enter into a permanent dialogue, not only with themselves, not only at a diplomatic level or at a ministerial level, but also I'm asking them to talk openly and to, more than anything, to listen to the researchers and also to those communities who they so blithely describe in their speeches, but they've never actually been there. I'll give you an example, and I'm pretty easy about naming names. For example, when I was at UNEP in Nairobi, I was shocked to discover that most of the hierarchy of UNEP had never ever been to Kibera or Korogocho. So the United Nations Environment Programme, or for example, UN Women, okay, who are organizations ostensibly responsible for dealing with these issues, they had never been to the biggest slum in Africa, which happened to be 15 minutes down the road, because they considered it to be dangerous. That is a problem. That is a problem. So what I'm asking, so all of these people receive very different messages from me. Okay. And you can't say, all right, which community do you address most? No, you have to address all of them. You have to address what we call the quintuple helix: the public sector, the private sector, the research sector, the cultural sector, because they need to be our communicators at a broad, so we say, international level, and also national level, and also local level, and then the citizens themselves. And it's the citizens themselves who really have to bear the burden of leadership and of initiative, and they must be supported by us. But they are the people who should be responsible for dealing with the specific challenges which they are facing at their local level. And they are. And this is I mean, for example, something else which always really annoys me is that when we're discussing in international conferences subject A, B, or C, they also then introduce a youth representative. I go, why are you separating the youth? For example, when I'm working with local communities across the world, most of those people, technically, I mean, the definition of youth constantly changes, but now it's under 35, generally speaking. Yeah. Well, most of the initiatives with which I'm collaborating, they're led by people who are under 35. So don't differentiate from them. Don't patronize them. But at the same time, I would say to the youth themselves, don't think that you are special. We've all been young and we all thought that we were special. Yeah. You're not. You're another human being. You're an adult. You're already an adult by the time you're 17, 18, or depending on the society, 13 or 14. So act like one. Be part of it. Take the leadership. Take the initiative. But don't hide behind your age. Okay? So many different messages to many different people. That's why I'm bald, because I spend my whole time trying to get to reach out to so many different sectors at the same time.
And how receptive did you find all these audience to understand?
If they receive the correct message, very receptive. If they receive the wrong message, and it doesn't coincide, for example, I never go to a government or a supranational agency and say, hi, I represent a research, represent the research sector. I want money. I have never, ever asked anybody for money. When I start a conversation, for example, I had meetings with the Prime Minister of Albania and the meetings with the Prime Minister of Slovenia, and also with the President of Slovenia the other day in Bled. I didn't ask them for money. I asked them, what can I do to help you? What are your aims? This is something else as well that many sectors, for example, the research sector, I know, basically, systematically only approaches political establishments, political agencies when they need money. Why are they not talking to the representatives, the elected representatives of the population from the very beginning, saying, look, what are the aims of your policies? What are you trying to do? How can we work together so that you achieve your aims and that we achieve our aims? That's science diplomacy. And that is something which as well has been ignored to our peril in many years. I mean, the problem is that as a society in general, as a global society, we tend to define ourselves. We define ourselves by our nationality or by our religion or by our sect or by our profession, by our sector. And we can't do that. We can't afford to do that. We do need to have a very, very open dialogue. And as I said before, politicians are not something that are produced in a factory somewhere and then suddenly appear and say, vote for me. They're just a reflection of the society from which they've come from.
Perfect. So I just wanted to discuss a case study with you of a nature-based solution wherein we have impacted the soil, water, air, biodiversity, temperature, everything, just by working on the conjunction point of soil, water, and air, which are the wetlands and the water bodies. We have invented a technology which is a nature-based solution, 100% based on herbal extracts, wherein we study the water body, we make a medicine which is 100% botanical extract, shipped to the location, and then the water body is treated with this medicine, right? We did multiple water bodies in the same city, and the end resultant was the air quality, which was the worst in the state where it existed for consistently for 5 years. That same city won the national award for the best work in air pollution mitigation. The groundwater recharge, which had not happened from 2009 till 2021, that started happening in 2022 when we did that project, right? The biodiversity conservation was so huge that WWF sent a delegation of more than 300 people to understand how small water bodies can contribute towards biodiversity conservation. Now, the point is, when I take this case study to the scientific community, wherein all the data is scientifically recorded, what is the water quality before intervention, how it improved over a period of time, how did the air quality improve, how did the groundwater recharge improve. The biggest resistance that I get is from the scientific community itself, in spite of having all the data with them to actually quantify all the impacts which have happened. So if the scientific community itself doesn't accept something which is beyond what they have been doing for last 30, 40 years, how will a politician accept it, or how will a policy maker accept it? I mean, if you're talking about the normal people, yes, they are all with me because they are the beneficiaries. They can breathe a fresh air now. Their groundwater quality has changed. Earlier, they were unable to drink that because of the salinity. After my project has happened, all the people in the vicinity who are drawing the groundwater, they have a sweet water to drink. The animals have started drinking the same water, the cattle, right? But the upper hierarchy of the administration or the politician or the scientific community, they don't accept and buy that something outside of our knowledge. I mean, I think the whole purpose of science is to understand how nature works. If I have understood it better than somebody else, that's uh, that's not a fault. That's actually an addition to the known science. But the biggest resistance that I get is primarily from the scientific community. And then when they give a negative feedback about a particular technology, obviously the administration will have a challenge to accept it because they are the consultant. And then the same goes up higher ups into the politicians, because the bureaucrat is not accepting an idea. Why? Because the academia is not in support of that particular idea. You see, the entire chain goes like that. So what
I'm
is your
just,
advice
I'm,
to
I'm just surprised to hear that there's a politician who's listening to the opinion of academia. Um, I'm not a scientist myself here. Elena, I don't know if perhaps you would be better you would be better situated to address that question. You're muted, huh? Okay. You're still muted.
Can't hear you.
We can't hear you, Elena.
I guess there's a bandwidth problem at her
While
end.
Ellen, just while Elena is sorting out her problem with her mic, I would just say that, I mean, what you've described, I don't know the situation. I don't know what is the methodology that you've applied or anything like that. So I can't judge it scientifically. I would be the last person to judge anything scientifically. But what I would say to you is that and I presume that you're describing a situation in India itself. I mean, India is a very bureaucrat. I was working as a journalist actually in Afghanistan and India back in the early 80s. And I do know it's a very bureaucratic country, but that was 40 years ago, so I can't judge it now. What I would say is that what you've described, and I don't know the value or the merits of your solutions that you were applying, but what I would say is that what you've described is a good example of what we're trying to overcome, which is this lack of dialogue and this lack of trust between the different sectors. That would be my only comment on it, without having any other knowledge of the technical issues or what have you. But yes, you're right. Bureaucracies are unfortunate creations of human beings. I mean, my experience at the United Nations, I mean, I actually turned down an offer to stay there. And the reason why I turned it down was because as I told the principal scientist of UNEP, I would end up in a Kenyan prison having killed 50% of the people at the UN complex. Because bureaucracies and bureaucrats tend to become obsessed after a certain time, basically with defending their own unit or their own branch or their own division, or indeed their own agency. And in fact, they spend more time competing against each other than actually getting on with the issues which they're supposed to be addressing. And that happens not just in the UN, that happens in any major bureaucracy at a national or international level. And maybe we're fighting human nature. I don't know. But Elena, I don't know if you've got your microphone back now.
No, still not working.
No, it's still not there. If I understood sign language, I would translate for Elena, but I don't. Can somebody
So you're
else ask?
currently in Spain, Dr. Richard?
Can somebody else
Are you
answer?
based out of Spain or you are Spanish?
Oh no, don't go into that. I'm half Russian, I'm half Portuguese. I was born in London. My sister was born in Paris, and I live in Spain, but I also travel around the world. So I'm a bit of a mix.
This question is for a specific reason that I happen to be rated globally #2 author on water technologies by Smart Water Magazine Spain. So that's how I was
Okay.
selected.
Good to meet you. But yes, yeah, I'm based here in Spain. I work for the Catalan research sector. Yeah.
Thank you.
Which is Spanish, despite what the Catalans say. Won't go in that. I won't go down that road now. But
Perfect. I guess Dr. Ilana has got some microphone problem. She has just sent a
yes,
chat that there's some problem at her end.
yeah, she says she's having a problem with the microphone. Sumi, I don't know, or Sarah, I don't know. I think that maybe the organizers should come in on this point because I've just seemed to have become the coordinator of the meeting. So help.
Mr. Madhukar, now it's really interesting to know about the conversation. So, Richard, and thank you, and Professor Elena, it's wonderful presentation indeed. So, I must say, Mr. Madhukar, please share your contact details as that we can further communicate. Chat box.
Sure, definitely. Should I put it in the chat?
Yeah, yeah, you can do it in chat box. Yes, yes, Professor Elena, please. Please unmute. No, no, we can't hear you. Can you join once again? Please left and join once again.
Sir, can we move forward with the next questions till then?
Sure, sure, sure.
Okay, first of all, thank you so much, Dr. Richard, and also Mr. Prabhukas, to give us such insightful responses and sharing your thoughts and wonderful knowledges which you have shared. So the next question from Ms. Ruchana, she has made the question in the chat box to Mr. Okuzu. Mr. Okuzu, sir, are you here?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'm here.
Yes, sir. So the question for you is, for a country like Nigeria, where population generally proves to be a barrier to implementation of policies and intervention, how do you ensure efficiency?
Anyway, addressing challenges like illegal deforestation in a country with large, growing population like Nigeria requires a, multifaceted approach that combines policy enforcement, community engagement, and technological innovation. And these can be achieved, by strengthening enforcement. We need to enhance the capacity of law enforcement agencies to monitor and penalize illegal activities. This can be done by leveraging technologies such as imaging and drones for real-time monitoring of forests, and again, the community involvement. So I would say, for instance, I've seen several, events where people do cut down trees, and they do that for some reasons. Um, I think a good number are doing that for for fire source for cooking, and each time we try to to get to know them, what's actually leading to such. So, but tree security is actually another separate problem, not just to Nigeria, but to all countries, who are practicing afforestation. Without the government backing up this very agreement, it's becomes very, very difficult because there are so many reasons that leads to deforestation. The urbanizations too can lead to deforestation. Even sometimes government even do that for some reasons. So but it's good to also inform them. It's not like deforestation is a bad thing, but you know putting some practices in place to help not to have the later effect of the deforestation. For instance, I'm in a town called Maiduguri at the moment, the Boko Haram certain area in Nigeria. So, and it's kind of a deserted region of the Nigeria. It's the northern part of Nigeria, and we hardly have trees here, you know. So, noting that we hardly have trees, I'm so much surprised to see them still cutting down the trees, that gives them the little shade. Just like I said earlier, I tried asking them why they're doing so. They mentioned, mostly for firewood, for cooking. So, but something is different. Some trees are really not tempered with, and that's where the community involvement comes in. Because currently we are on a campaign for a million tree, but this can't be achieved because we are also looking at the sustainability, but um, we are also trying to work with the stakeholders of the communities in conservations. So, and so far, I think we're coming up with this idea of you know uh, because they have a community leader, you know, a past leader who is so much respected. I think the Shehu of Brno, who is so much respected in the state. So, and we're trying to integrate the campaign, into his name because he's loved by almost every resident of the state. So we're trying to integrate this very tree planting. Every house is entitled to plant trees belonging to this very Shehu of Brno. That's um, Shehu Usman. So Al-Kanami, sorry. So, and I think by doing so, they will be discouraged from deforestation of such trees. But most importantly, is the involvement of the government, making policies and then education, because most people don't know, they don't know the consequences of this very deforestation. For example, the even sometimes we record the deforestation can also happen in some abusive way. Overgrazing can also lead to deforestation. So education is something that we are taking very, very serious, mostly in the northern Nigeria, to help us win this very stop deforestation campaign. Yeah, so that's it basically for Nigeria. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. It was insightful.
Thank you, sir. We have Mr. Madhukar raising his hand. Sir, would you like to share something with us? Please
So
go
I just
on.
wanted to ask a question with Dr. Okizu because you are the head of IW in Nigeria. Are you doing anything about restoration of Lake Chad?
Thank you so much. That's a very, very important question, Madhukar. I'm so much excited you pointed that out. Um, so the Lake Chad, like you mentioned, it's something that happened some decades ago. We used to record over 25 kilometers square surface, but we have over 90%, depletion. Now we have, I think, less than 1,500 kilometers square left, and this is, I would say, this is traced to, poor communication, poor awareness, because if these, the depletion were communicated earlier and policies were taken immediately, just like what Egypt did on Lake Quran. Immediately they noticed the depletion. They had to make, policies to protect the lake. So yeah, so currently we are still on a campaign. That's why I said currently it's not, Dr. Richard mentioned something about his own experience with the UNESCO, because most of this very job comes with a tax, because you can't offer a solution where there's a problem, and then you're not within the region of this very problem. So, and yeah, I think the current location where I am now is the most insecure states in Nigeria, but that's where the Lake Chad, is situated. And remember, the Lake Chad is not just in Nigeria; it's bordered both Niger, Cameroon, and Chad. So, but um, Maiduguri, which is Borno State, is the state that has the greater portion of the Lake Chad, and that's so much reason why I had to, migrate from the city down to the local communities where this very Lake Chad is, so to better understand ways, to recover it. And I assure you that soon, we'll be kicking up a campaign to, attract more attention, to see how we can, um, um, facilitate and make policies work for the restoration of that very lake chat, because it used to be a source of life for a good number of persons, not even just Nigerians. Even we have people from Sudan, Niger, and all of that normally come around, and it's also a source of fish, for the residents. So yeah, we currently on it, and then we're recording some progress. Recently, had a meeting with the commissioner for water resources in the state. So, and I'm so excited that they're also taking it as a priority. To see how we can, work together as regard the revival of the Lake Chad. So it's a work in progress, and you can keep your eyes on the updates. Thank you so much for sharing that.
And I would surely love to remain in touch with you to understand whatever developments are happening. But one thing which I would like to discuss it out with you is that by and large, all the communities, all the bureaucracy, all the governments are taking water bodies just as a pool or reservoir of water, whereas they are actually the ecosystem service providers to the vicinity. The day we are able to change this definition of the water body from a reservoir to an ecosystem service provider, I'm sure the governments will naturally have a lot of focus towards the restoration of the water bodies.
Yeah, one of the good thing about this is that the Lake Chad has really led to I think there's so much loss. So at this point, the government and all of the stakeholders are well informed of the consequences of the lake chat, because it's not something, it's not just in papers, they can feel it. Because recently in Nigeria there's this very problem between the northern Nigeria and the southern Nigerian farmers, because the northern Nigerians are known for cattle rearing, while a good number of the south are known for normal agriculture. So there's the herdsmen migrate from the north and to the south, for pasture, and they're destroying so many agricultural lands here in the south. So, and that's really causing a very national problem, national conflict. And not just that, if I still recall during the Boko Haram of a thing, a good number of people, the lake chat also has a footprint, and which they're, currently getting to understand, because prior to now, residents of the state, source agricultural water from the lake chat, and so many things, beneficial for them from the lake chat. But as the lake chat disappears, agricultural becomes very, very difficult for these very people. And that's really gave them a window to look at the Boko Haram, joining the Boko Haram and all of that. So that really led to the crisis as well. So the footprint is clear, is there. So at this very point, the stakeholders are so much aware, and I'm so much excited that currently we have the former governor of the state happens to be the current vice president of Nigeria. So that's more credits to talk about the lake chat more. So I think at this very point we are having the good attention we can have as regard the lake chat. So it's a work in progress.
Perfect.
Thank you so
Now,
much,
one thing
Madhukar.
which I wanted to add to our discussion is uh, all the project that we are doing right now in the state of Uttar Pradesh. We've also involved an institution called Giri Institute of Development Studies, which is doing the socio-economic impact survey of the water body rejuvenation project that we're doing. Now, I was also overwhelmed to know that just by restoring the health of the water bodies, we are spreading health and wellness all around. The vector-borne disease, the waterborne disease, and the air pollution-borne diseases are all eradicated from the vicinity. Just because if the water body is healthy, these things don't happen. And this is a massive saving into the pockets of the marginalized community, as well as overall health index is also improving.
Exactly. I agree with you totally. Because not just that, we also recorded cholera outbreak here. So all of these are still signals, So and just like I said, all of these have been reviewed because we've recorded so many consequences as regard poor attention and mistakes of the past, which the government have done on the lake charge. So and so much excited. Just like I said, I'm currently at the site of the event, so and I'm fully ready for whatsoever thing that could be done to see that the lake child is revived. So and yeah,
You can share your contact details. We'll remain in touch.
thank you so much, Madhukar. Thank you so much, Madhukar.
Thank you, Mr. Gozu, and thank you, Mr. Madhukar. So we now have our next question from Mr. Suman. Mr. Suman asks, taking all these views and insights, what is way forward for to make it reality to integrate all aspects and expect from policymakers, politicians, governments at COP29 and various other platforms? Mr. Suman, is this question for any particular panelist or is this question for in general?
Anybody can answer.
Okay, so the question is to the all of the panelists, so you can go on with your responses, please.
So, Dr. Richard, you can have it.
No, you first, please.
All right. So regarding the question, I think the concept is really having a very very poor awareness. Everything still boils down to the awareness. I see you mentioned the COP29, and you know it's very very important, having sessions or workshop, particularly on MBS, just like the way policies are made around that EIA, that's an environmental impact assessment for every project. I think it's very very important because the COP29 is an event that brings together a good number of stakeholders in various sectors. So I think it's also a very very point of discussion about this very NBS. So yeah, if we can hold on to or push up for this this session, there, I think that would be very very great as regard the awareness and yeah. And that's something I would recommend, we start as soon as we can, because the COP29 is few days from now. So for those of you who would be there, I would also encourage you, to always talk about the NBS, because this is something that's really gonna pay us off.
I would personally suggest that the COP themselves are a total waste of time. I've spoken at a couple of them. I remember the one that was in Madrid. I can't remember what COP number it was. There's been 20.
In Madrid?
Yeah, but in Madrid, I remember that the chief sponsor of the COP were two Spanish companies who are basically responsible for climate change.
Excel.
For example, as well, when you see that the COP is happening in places such as Qatar or Saudi Arabia, then you realize the hypocrisy and the greenwashing or the blue washing that is going on. I think that nature-based solutions can be far better served by being demonstrated as being effective to the people who require those solutions. That is the only way that you're going to really establish NBS as viable methodologies, which will then be picked up by local politicians, regional politicians, and then successively going upwards. The United Nations themselves, with behind closed doors, are aware of the fact that events such as COP have undoubtedly been kidnapped by some of the major industrial and corporate hypocrites, which doesn't mean that all corporations are bad, but it does mean that there's an awful lot of hypocrisy, and it's a waste of time. I've refused to go to the last two COPs because, to be quite honest, I've got better things to do with my life. Instead of just hearing people giving out the same speeches, which very often they don't. First of all, I never trust anybody who has to read a speech. That's the clearest demonstration that they have no idea what they're talking about whatsoever. And so, to watch a group of people file through a conference hall, read out speeches which were written for them, where they're obviously not even prepared to answer questions because they wouldn't have a clue how to answer them. It's a total waste of time. I think we have to go beyond the conferences. I spent a lot of my time being annoyed by having to travel around the world, going to conferences and saying, well, why can't I do it like this online? If internet's caused a lot of problems, but if one of the advantages is that it means that people can, from the comfort of their home, as you can see here, I'm in my kitchen happily smoking a cigarette and nobody's complaining about the smoke. Yeah, I mean, that's fantastic. But let's get beyond the conference part, because these conferences are just a waste of time. They're not getting any decisions made whatsoever. There's a lot of good intentions, but the basic fact of the matter is that, for example, organizations such as the United Nations are in the pockets of the nation states. The UN has no money. The UN has no influence. So, for example, I was working very closely with the GEMS unit of UNEP, which is the Global Environmental Monitoring Systems. Now then, if the nation state don't want you to have the data, you don't get the data. And there's nothing the UN can do about that. In the same way that if nation states happily sign these protocols and these agreements and what have you, and then they are determined that they will not meet with any of the requirements for those agreements. So what is the point? And in the meantime, we are living in a society which needs very, very urgent solutions now. So I'm personally heading far more towards the action rather than the words scenario. You do need to talk. Meetings and conferences and webinars such as this are useful to create awareness, but basically, very often we're either talking to the we're already preaching to the converted in this conversation. So that's a waste of time. I mean, there's 8 billion people out there who you need to get the message out to, not to us. Yeah. And in question of COP, it is a total waste of time, because it's basically corporate interests trying to present themselves in a very, very erroneous light. And I get very annoyed by it. I mean, I'll give you an example of just how hypocritical society has become recently, which is when I was informed that the permanent secretary of the UN Committee for Women's Rights is now Saudi Arabia. Now, if anyone can explain that decision to me, okay, you're more than welcome. I know what the reason is. It's money. Yeah. So the Saudis have obviously promised certain UN agencies a certain amount of money for their projects, or to keep them employed with their highly inflated salaries. But in the meantime, we're please allow us to pretend that we're actually concerned about women's rights. And that's unfortunately the global society that we live in at the moment. So call me cynical if you wish, but I'm not prepared to just sit there in an audience at COP and listen to people saying stuff which they obviously don't believe in. You can tell it's a Saturday morning. I wouldn't be saying that on a Monday
Mr.
morning.
Madhukar,
Yeah, Dr. Richard, I had a point of view which I actually happened to be there in COP 28 last year in Dubai. And why I feel that people like you should be there is primarily because when I spoke to the UAE authorities and the Dubai authorities, they were kind of zapped to understand that emission reduction is just a one part of the approach till the time you also don't parallelly start doing sequestration, which is a natural process. And the removal of the legacy emission is there from the atmosphere. There's nothing going to happen because everybody is talking about cut reduction. Reduce the emission, cut the emission. Overnight, the world cannot shift from fossils to renewables. And even if assuming that we can do it in one night, hypothetically also, then also the amount of emission which is already there in the atmosphere for last 400 years will not let the global warming come down, will not let the reverse of the climate change happen. So we need to have a two-pronged strategy. One is, okay, if you're going that way to reduce the emission, it's fine. But parallelly, till the time we don't increase the sequestration, nothing's going to happen because we have created this imbalance by too much of emission. It was not that before human beings there was no emission happening. Emission was happening on its own pace, but at the same time there was a balanced amount of sequestration happening to keep the ball rolling. Now what has happened is we have increased the emission exorbitantly, but we are not thinking at sequestration at all, and that is what has created an imbalance. Now nature has already given us so much of infrastructure for sequestration. All water bodies, whether landlocked or oceans or sea, doesn't matter, all water bodies are sequesters. They are the carbon sinks, they are the temperature sinks, and they are the oxygen emitters. More than 50% of the oxygen in the atmosphere is emitted by the water bodies. I don't know why people in COP neither understand this nor propagate this idea. That is
Don't
why
make,
like you who speak
one piece of advice. One piece of advice. It's a personal opinion, but don't make the mistake of believing that those people don't know that. It's not a question of whether they know it or not. It's a question of are they willing for whatever is their personal agenda or their corporate agenda to apply and act on it. When you talk to anyone from the corporate world or from the political world about things such as you're describing now, they know that. They know that. They don't need to hear those speeches either. It's a question of are they willing to act in it? And that is when it becomes a political issue. And that is where we need to decide. We need to discover new forms of addressing the issue is by making it where they themselves, for their own personal agendas, no matter what that may be, economic, political, social, or their simple human ego, when it needs to appeal to them. But that's human nature. That's what you're fighting against. Also, I mean, you know, for example, it's not just a question of emissions. It's also a question of population. Yeah, who's going to be the politician who tells people stop having babies? But hey, if you want to know the real causes of, if you want to know the real causes of many of these climate change issues, India itself, as I said before, in the 80s, I was there as a journalist. I was working as a correspondent in Afghanistan, and then I went into India for 2 years. Yeah, and the population was 750 million. Now, I'm not that old. Yeah, it was only 38, 39, 38 years ago, and the population's doubled. It's now 1.5 billion. That's where your problems are coming from as well. Okay, but who's the person who's going to tell people, you can't have more than one baby or two babies? They've tried that. They tried that in the Soviet Union in the 60s, and that didn't work. Yeah. So we have to look beyond the banal, and we have to also take the blindfold from our eyes and understand the real social and political realities. And that it can become very frustrating. But as I said before in a previous intervention, it's a question of education as well. If people can only do things if other people allow them to. There was an English philosopher who said, the evil do evil because the good do nothing. I'm paraphrasing more or less. Okay, well, that's the problem. And why is that? And why is that good? Because of the education system. Elena, I think let's give Elena a try for the microphone. I'm talking far too
Yes.
much.
Is it working?
Yep,
Okay,
yep.
great,
It's working.
great.
Yes, ma'am,
Yeah,
you're
we have
audible.
you.
I'd like to say something about the relevance of the meetings, and because I think that we just tend to listen to a lot of talking and talking and talking about emissions and energy. We never speak of very little about food. And this is we know that 1/3 of the problem is coming from food, but we don't speak about food. And this is not an issue for most of the world, but I think that the Western country should be considered responsible for what they are eating, throwing away, how much meat they are throwing away, and how this kind of meat is just destroying the planet. And I say that, yes, I like animals. Animals are just natural, blah, blah. As I said before, that we are together in the same situation. But even if we don't care about animals at all, we just must remember that eating that much meat, we are just destroying them. But we don't speak about meat. In Italy, there must be a very, very big amount of money for the resilience, the big plan for resistance, PNRR is called. Yes, but everything is about energy. Okay, it's a problem, but also food is a problem, and we don't. And so when Richard said about something about the corporate agenda, apparently, the food corporation are even more powerful than oil corporation. And this is something that we have to remember. And when we speak about education, we must remember that we must educate our children and ourselves also about what we are eating. And so I'm very sorry, but I have to go. So it's been a pleasure to be with you. And I think that is the meeting is ending in a few moments, so I'm staying, but I am in a bit of a hurry. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much. So thank you to
so
Dr. Richard, Mr. Madhukar, and Mr. Okosu. Anyone else would like to share something? Okay, so that comes to an end of our interactive session. Now I would like to invite Mr. Ankit Sengupta to deliver the vote of thanks. Thank you.
Hello all. It is my pleasure to be able to deliver the vote of thanks to everyone. I would like to acknowledge everybody's contribution, which has made this discussion a success. Everybody's insights and all the facts and figures that were shared during this conversation was really insightful, and I think it will really help us towards making our future way more brighter than it is today. I, on behalf of SAIARD, extend my sincere thanks to our esteemed delegates, the speakers, and the participants from all over the world who have spared their valuable time in order to make this session a success. So thank you all. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you, Elena and Madhukarji and Ozuko. It's really a great session and lots of things we will learn. So hopefully we will share the YouTube link as soon as it will be uploaded. And Madhukarji, we will keep in touch as that in future we can be able to collaborate and work together with your organization. You are based in Kolkata or where?
No, I'm based out of Delhi.
Delhi. Okay, okay, fine. So nice of you. Okay. So thank you, all of you. Hope to see you again. We in coming week we are also going to organize another 2 sessions. That is on GLOF and another one for the Joshi Mott and its impact on the urban resilience pact. So I will also send the request or invitation mail, or you may find it in our LinkedIn profile too. And if you will join, you can give your consent also on the comments on the dialogues. We'll be happy to associate. Thank you. Bye, Richard. Thank you,
Thank you so
Amrita.
much.
Thank you, Somi and Anju. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, sir.